Speak about Birdman and Lil Wayne.
I got my son right here. Okay. Special delivery too. He was a special.
They, they used to be a thing they do where they would come in for a peck, a kiss, or whatever.
My bad. Got the whole family.
It's the greatest gay market in the world. The hip-hop community is most likely owned by gay. I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip-hop.
Y'all's on media take. Yeah, Birdman. What a deal. I'm gonna be real. Birdman. What a deal, man. I suck Birdman.
Pause.
Pause? Pause what?
You said something gay, so you gotta say no homo, or else you a homo.
I like when you like this, Daddy. Daddy, I like when you so.
My Draco might be gay. Why? Cause he pro niggas.
Because we've been taught and we've been socialized to scorn male affection. And that extends beyond homosexuality. Just look at how men are hardwired to feel disgust and shame in situations such as these. Which is something that I spoke with Soulsome about, who shared some light on an otherwise very dark and dour topic.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because physical contact is as essential to human flourishing as food and air and water. So many, like, cisgender, heterosexual men in particular, just rely so heavily on the women in their lives for emotional intimacy. And then as soon as they're in a relationship, particularly if they're monogamous, they're in a monogamous relationship, and then they need that physical contact with their female partners. They need it so much because they're starving for it. They just don't have it.
In that moment, I also wondered why I felt safer to discuss this topic with Soulsome, and not the men in mask in my immediate life.
Let's be real. Like, from a black person perspective, I was just, white people are just softer. That's why I felt more comfortable. I'm just not scared of white people. The research that Neil B. Wade did in her book, Deep Studies, and they talked about how when they looked at white males, they had the most violent and homophobic rhetoric towards one another. But when you talk to them, they actually felt the most distant from their friends than their African-American and Puerto Rican and Dominican counterparts. And I feel like something about that is that white men are allowed to they are allowed to show more emotion because they are the default. So everyone else gets demonized from that point on. But that's kind of how strict masculinity is, or how strict white masculinity is.
I found that I've always had an easier time discussing my softer side with white men as opposed to black men.
Maybe it's because I'm transmasc. Maybe it's because I'm bi. Maybe it's because I'm a white dude. And as far as me being a white guy, you can connect with me as a Bahamian, but you don't have to prove your masculinity as a black man to me. So you get a break from that cultural performance that is expected of you in other circumstances, right?
I asked my token white chocolate brethren, Noah Sampson, about this situation as well. And he was at a loss trying to empathize with my questions.
I feel like right now when I'm trying to reflect on it, I feel like there's some repression going on because I'm it's not, the memory I know is there, but it's inaccessible. I have almost never reflected on it in the context of those friendships. And that itself is an argument that this is something that is subconscious and experienced without active. It's so socialized that you don't even know it's going on.
It soon became clear that there was something uniquely intriguing about black cishet male relationships and the homoerotic. What place does these no homo and sus jokes have in these relationships? What is a homosexual?
What are we supposed to do now? This guy gonna be here in an hour.
Oh, no. We can't with this song now. I mean, if everyone, think he a homo, when we get on the track with him, we gonna be homo.
And pause. No pun intended, but we first need to address the homosexual and what it is not in order to delve into what it is. The first instinct that folks go to when analyzing a departure from the traditional masculine strips between bros is that the transgressor is actually gay.
I am real. I am here, and nothing can push me aside. Nothing can change what goes on in this world. This world is for me too, honey. And they have to understand that. I have a right to be here just like everybody else. See, their problem is they don't want you to know about me. Because first of all, I get too many dicks hard. Simple as that. Our whole world is being run by perverted undercover that run around talking about how straight they are. You got big time celebrities that go around in their cars picking up trans, having sex with them, and then getting on national TV making fun of them. Everything you do in life is like a boomerang.
We see this especially when folks critique hip-hop legends like Diddy. Rather than pretending his straightness, people claim he's pretending his straightness. That he's actually a gay predator that turns out his male rapper catalog in exchange for fame. Despite his very visible performances of hetero hegemony in his rap lyrics, aesthetic, or old-school playboy promiscuity, the undercover brother-lover stigma shadows Diddy like the protagonist of You, which is something that, in the Black community especially, is incessantly invested in, as evinced by the numerous op-eds and subreddits dedicated to unearthing Diddy's latent homosexuality. And rather than raking him over the coals for his Black capitalist antics, or even more conspiratorial pursuits like what really happened to Biggie, we would instead make epistles detailing Diddy's gay comments. It's an obsession of the down-low Black men, the closeted Black man, the Black man that is scorned more than Satan himself.
A lot of men are on the DL, down low, doing a lot of shit behind people's back and not being honest about it. Big reason is because they're not given a safe space to be who they are. When you got a woman who will let you know she's been with the woman before, or, you know, she's into women every now and again, they're not judged like that. It's looked at in society, it's like, it's cool, it's accepted. When a man say that, he's gay, he got a disease, he this, he that, and I wonder why. I want to know why is it a double standard like that?
Any indication that a man has or is involved with any other man confines him to queerness, no matter what. Great example is his pivotal scene from Issa Rae's Insecure.
I messed around with a guy before.
Wait, you do what?
I mean, it was like a long time ago.
Oh, so you're like bi?
No. No, definitely not.
One time being like a couple other guys, or just...
Molly, one guy.
Mm-hmm.
One time. That's it.
Black men in mass are not granted the sexual liberty to engage in ephemeral recreational arrangements, which is something that even Black women and femmes are given countenance to engage in, despite their social status being lower than roach dick in the caste of society due to misogynoir, which puts the bisexual Black man in a precarious position. They do not know what to do with you. I take that back, they do. They will default you as gay. It's like the one-drop rule. You suck a little bit of dick, just a tip. You know, a drunk college moment, you're like, man, fire and brimstone, Sodom and Gomorrah. So attributing this analysis to Diddy, whether he is bisexual or down low, it's a no. But my question after all of this discourse is, why is this a question to begin with?
I think the only thing that they're in the closet about is their craving for human contact. It's like an old, like Freudian style thinking, which is that heterosexual men engage in violence with other men to satisfy their desire for physical contact, right? Like there's that style of thinking. Mm-hmm. And how much of that is true? Because like anyone should regard Freud with like a teaspoon of salt. I think that the problem is when people are saying like, you know, men engage in violence towards other men because of repressed homosexual urges, that's just feeding the problem. That's feeding this idea that male interest in contact is inherently sexual. It's not. Maybe they engage in violence with other men just because they're satisfying their desire for closeness. I like to ask men, particularly cishet men, at what point did you notice that the world stopped giving you physical affection? Like, did your mom stop hugging you, and when? Did men in your family ever hug you? And when did it switch from hugs to handshakes when you saw them at family parties? Like, when did that happen? How old were you? And were you experienced enough to make sense of it?
Even if Diddy was to his way to fame, and he has undercover parties where hip-hop goes homo, even if this was the case, why does it matter so much to us? That's not rhetorical. I need an answer. Why is homophobia so endemic to hip-hop?
Because it's the idea that if you see a person like Biggie say something that is in our culture so on its face if you don't hear what you just hear in the line for the first time. So emasculating, that is surprising because, well, Black men are supposed to be this hyper masculine ideal. So why would he not why is he talking about dicks, one, but also why is he also like imagining himself in the submissive role of a sexual act? All that implicitly is funny because it's taboo. So it's like, haha, and then you're like, you know, and he saves himself, right? Because what he's really saying on the meta narrative of all of it is that this woman that I'm objectifying is so bad that I gotta give my compliments to the chef. Which like is messed up, but also that's a hard one. That bar did not do anything for the fight against homophobia. It did nothing for gay rights, right? You know, like in a different whitewash tale, it's like Christopher Smalls rapped this line, and all of a sudden niggas were like, you know what? Maybe I can't suck a little dick if like my girl is bad enough. The bar itself reinforces like that cultural stigma because you know it's going to provoke a response because Biggie is portraying himself to be submissive when he's supposed to be dominant, and that's patriarchal. And the one thing we don't like is challenging the patriarchy. Nothing about rap needs to be homophobic. Like it literally is just it literally comes out of the need to speak from the voices of the oppressed.
And ergo, given that hip hop and blackness is inextricably linked, why is homophobia so inveterate to black culture? Now, of course, you know, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I need to obligatorily mention that we did not come up with homophobia. We were endowed with homophobia.
Among the many myths that have been created about Africa, the myth that homosexuality is un-African is one of the oldest and most persistent ones. Many of us have heard the claim that homosexuality is an imported Western evil or a white disease. So much so that of the 72 countries worldwide that criminalize homosexuality, 32 of them are in Africa. However, claiming that any one thing really is un-African completely reduces the whole continent to one homogeneous entity, and it's also not true. Homophobia, not homosexuality, is a vestige of colonial rule, and where people like to say that colonialists brought homosexuality to Africa, they actually imported the intolerance of it. Heck, they're the ones who introduced penal codes to outlaw and suppress queer identities on the continent and then repackaged those laws as centuries-old traditional African customs. Keep in mind, a lot of what is known today about traditional African cultures was written by the same colonial system that seriously disrupted them. In fact, pre-colonization, life in African communities was just as fluid and gradually changing as it was in any other part of the world. African societies had much more relaxed attitudes towards sexual orientation and gender identity, and even in cases where such things were frowned upon, they didn't have systems of surveillance and regulation to outlaw same-sex relationships.
Now that I have that out of the way, let's talk about it. Women have always lamented that the emotional constipation of men and masks and their inability to open up is a hindrance on the relationships. Hundreds of years of Eurocentric toxic masculinity and machismo has stunted the growth and the psychological framework of men in masks.
I've been in those stints where I really haven't talked to anyone for a long period of time, even though I know I have people to reach out to. I mean, like I've been like, yeah, let's call on the phone, and then I just go AWOL for like a few months, and it's like not only is it a dick move, but it's like I know if I were to call, it would be sick, like for both parties involved. But there's just something about that like it's like the lone wolf mentality.
Only in recent times has the analysis of men expanded to include how absolutely enamored many of them are with other men, and how men don't actually like women at all, but rather see them as sexual conquests and trophies for the approval of other men.
Compulsory heterosexuality and like how the pursuit of girls, there's a dynamic of like homophobia that happens where someone's either trying to spit game or someone never spits game and never like hooks up or pursues girls, that it's like that is inherently sus, and that has like an element of emasculation, I guess.
At the risk of sounding redundant, I want to be abundantly clear. Your average dude, especially black men, get women. And I put that in quotation marks. They get gals. Not because they want to have sex with them for pleasure, satisfaction, but because they want approval from their other men. Depictions of male friendships and bonding in media, the unspoken codes and rituals of manhood portrayed by both those we know and by fictional characters, and their externalization all contribute to hegemonic masculinity by producing new, hard-to-follow expectations while reinforcing existing social norms. He's from around your hometown. There's an urban connotation with it that connotes a particular gangster euphemism, which is why homosexual, as a play on the homoeroticism in cishet friendships between the homies. This is why it's so interesting. Everything about gangster culture is to bolster the hyper-patriarchal essence associated with black men in masks. The masculine mystique has been bred over centuries of slave labor, being ascribed to the brutish back of a black man through the rapacious avarice and appetite that white women should feel. And later, the so smooth that wear unctuous cocoa butter lubricant that ushers us between the legs of women. That is the avatar of the hyper-masculine black man. So when we combine that with the inference of homoerotic banter being between the bros, you now have the paradox. You now have the homosexual.
Wait, gay shit in which sense?
Like, no, like legit gay shit. Like, gonna say, damn, bro, you fine as
right.
It's, I'm trying I don't know, like, maybe I just outed all of my friends and, like, maybe nobody else does that.
You had me, then you didn't have me, but, like, I ain't finna judge. You might see your man dressed, like, super well. Like, you might really like the outfit that he got. And you be like, damn, bro, that shit fine. I might have to suck your dick for real. And, like, you just laugh because you're like, wow, that's a wild thing to say. But it's only wild because it's gay, and I've been taught that gay is funny.
And I think I'm supposed to laugh at that too. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think, like, if I hadn't laughed and we just, like, straight up, like, awkward silence dead, that, like, you say, oh yeah, that's just it. Like, we would have to have a different conversation altogether. Heterosexual male culture is homoerotic. It is man-loving. Coincidentally though, while hip-hop is associated with negative displays of black women, research concluded that men in rap desire love, affection, and sensitive displays, but only within the parameters of male dominance and heterosexuality. I've said this before, pop culture endlessly portrays black masculine figures as having no concept of sensitivity or emotional regulation. Remember that feedback loop I mentioned? Well, research conducted by sociologist Christy Ford in 2011 noted that society's perception of black men as thuggish, bolstered by music videos and songs consumed by black boys and men, influenced them to display the characteristics consistent with their depictions. The historic obsession with maintaining an emotionally constipated state isn't doing any favors for heterosexual cis men. From cradle to coffin, men and masks are taught that displays of emotion are signs of weakness. And nearly every member of society, from their parents to their guardians, to their peers and teachers, play a part in their discouragement. It's very difficult to talk about this because, yet again, I want to be clear, this is a safe space especially for dark-skinned black femmes and black women. However, at some point we really got to go and have a meeting about how black mothers, especially, contribute to grooming black men and masks to perform the very constipated masculinity that they claim to hate.
How are y'all protecting and defending queer black men, but then y'all be the ones that give birth to the men that kill trans women? Y'all literally create the homophobic and biphobic people in our community because you raise them.
Now, refusal to address one's emotions leads to a host of consequences. The S word, I think we all know what that is, isolation, aggressive, and the perpetuation of toxic masculinity.
He's gone, Kaiba.